Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is good to see all of you. Let's begin as we do each week with the heart taps so that we can see each other. And once again, as I begin each week, if you can go into gallery view, sometimes it's nice to see the members of our community as we celebrate Shabbat together. I understand that those who were in the waiting room before entering services noticed a question on the Mentimeter that we had been using in weeks past, and it was also included on Monday's broadcast earlier in the week when I was planning on delivering a Devar Torah, words of Torah, about Moses in our Torah portion this week and his relationship to New Year's resolutions. And I had it all planned out. And then came Wednesday. And so obviously I'm not going to discuss New Year's resolutions this evening. I want to talk about Wednesday's events. But if you did send in your resolutions, I do thank you. We will return to those. It might take a couple of weeks, but I promise you. And for those who didn't send in New Year's resolutions, you have an extra couple of weeks. So with that, it's good to see all of you after a difficult week in the life of our nation. It's time to celebrate Shabbat. We are instructed on Shabbat, even if we're in mourning, to feel joy. Even if we're sad or we're fearful or we're anxious, to celebrate. And that's what I hope we'll do this evening. So let's join together in a nigun, led by student Rabbi Lesner.
Let's bring in Shabbat together with these sacred words, Lechu Neranena. Lechu Neranena L'Adonai Nariah Litzor Yishenu Nikad Mafanav B'todah Bizmirot Nariah Lo Yedinai Nai Nai Yedinai Nai Nai Yedinai Nai Nai
Let us turn to the lighting of our Shabbat candles, and it brings intention. It takes intention to bring light into our world. So let us bring good intention and goodness into our world as we light our Shabbat candles. If you have candles with you, we'll ask you to place them in front of you or in view so that we can see the light that our community brings together this Shabbat as we join together in the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ציוונו להדליק נר של שבת.
And we continue with the words of Shalom Aleichem as we welcome Shabbat with peace and joy.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ay, 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 po'echem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Nil Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ay, 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 tzidchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon,
We welcome Shabbat in a royal presence as we join together in words of Lecha Dodi.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, hishmi'anu el ha'miyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shem ultiferet v'litchila lecha dodi, likrat invite you to please position yourself or perhaps rise so that we may greet the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom, ateret bala, gam b'simcha uvetzola, toch emunei ham segula, boi chala, olecha dodi likrat kala, o penei Shabbat nekabela, olecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela, penei Shabbat nekabela.
We take a moment now for the words of Shema, a moment to listen, to truly hear what is happening within our hearts and to utter words of oneness and think about the ways in which we are connected. We join together for Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
We join together for our Hashkivenu prayer. Let there be love, let there be peace, let there be understanding, let there be friendship, and think about the ways in which we are protected and the ways in which we need protection in our world. Let's join together. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu Leshalom, V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim, Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu L'shalom. Let there be love, let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Let us take a few moments as we find ourselves in the Amidah. And so if you're able, I invite you to rise in body or spirit, finding a way to center ourselves on the peace of love, of friendship, of gratitude in our lives as we begin with the words of Adonai Sfatai.
Yana nai nai nai, 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 yana nai nai nai. Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Ilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Yana nai nai nai, 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 yana nai nai nai.
Take a few moments in personal reflection and prayer.
We invite you to be seated as you finish your prayers or reflections, and we add to our own prayers a prayer for our country that was specifically written this week by a colleague of ours. So I invite you to join together with me. Eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, spread the wings of your sheltering presence over the members of the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States Senate. As our elected officials shape the destiny of the country, bless them with wisdom and understanding, and inspire them to be true to their oaths to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. May they draw on the inspiration and wisdom that guided the founders of our democracy, and show them the way that will lead us to transcend this painful, hateful moment.
Cause us to embrace the virtues of humility, forbearance, decency, and kindness. Teach us to renounce anger and cynicism. Lead us to embrace your teachings and your truths, to be pursuers of justice and peace, that we may learn to join hands with one another to build America to be, once again, a light to the nations. This moment calls all of us to renew our pledge to the motto of our nation, E pluribus unum, out of the many we are one. We must reject with all our might the forces that seek to divide us as a nation and stand together as one nation under God against violence, intolerance, bigotry, and hate.
Must demand both of ourselves and our leaders that we restore our commitment to honesty, integrity, and the common good, so that we can renew trust and faith in the institutions of government and our public servants. Let us learn to celebrate the humanity in those that differ from us, to learn again to love not simply our neighbors, but also the stranger, and to restore a collective love for the United States of America.
And so let us join together in Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen.
And as we do each week, we now continue with words of Mi Shebeirach, our prayer for healing, healing of body, of soul, of mind. And we open the chat room and invite anyone here who would like to type in the name of an individual that they're thinking of at this time. And of course, we think of all of those suffering from COVID-19 throughout the world and pray for their recovery.
Avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi Shebeirach Imoteinu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
Of course, on Shabbat each week, we also give thanks to those sacred moments in life or those first-time experiences from this past week. And so if you have a Shehechianu moment, we hope you'll raise your hand. How about any birthdays this week? We wish you a mazel tov. I want to acknowledge Richard Lappin. I heard that it's your 75th birthday that is soon approaching. Happy birthday, everybody.
And we
How
see
about
Gloria too.
Oh, good. How about anniversaries or engagements? I am told that Eric Ricklin, who I remember as a very young child, just got engaged to Kayla. Some mazel tov, Eric, and to your family. How about raise your hands? And I'm going to now scroll through the screen because this was another pre-notification. Lost your first tooth. Raise your hand, Alyssa Mazel Tov. Let's see. I hope only young people that lost their first tooth here. Good. Mazel tov. How about just something that you experienced for the very first time this week? Because that is worthy of a Shehechianu as well, as we think into our lives about what we experienced this past week. Let us give thanks to God with these words, Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Thank you, Cantor.
Thank you.
It is good to see everyone. As many of you know, well, we're a big gathering this evening as well, as we are almost every Friday night. But on Wednesday evening, over 400 of us gathered on Zoom with only a couple of hours notice. And I want to thank all of you who were able to join us. I thought it was an extraordinarily beautiful service. And I want to thank my colleagues as well. It was just what I needed on that difficult evening. But after I spoke on Wednesday evening, really speaking about, really asking our leaders to be careful as they use their words for the debate that would follow that evening, I thought after the service, what else can be said? After all, we've been watching the news since Wednesday evening, probably far too often. And for the past 4 years, we've discussed the dangers of demagoguery and the frailty of our democracy and our need to protect it. For the past 4 years, it seems, we've explored the polarization of America, the importance of our speech, and the dangers of the internet, where falsities too often reign, creating alternative universes with few responsible authorities ready to protect us. And so after all of these years, perhaps the only surprise on Wednesday was that we were surprised, and that our leaders, some of whom incited this mob in the first place, were so unprepared for this moment. And so tonight I want to share with you a brief teaching from our Torah about the difference between protest and rage. Because protest is so important in our tradition. And as you know, it's important in a democracy too. But what we saw in Washington on Wednesday was not protest. It was rage. You see, in Judaism, protest is good. Abraham in the Torah even protests against God. When God's about to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham steps up and protests. Abraham says, God, how can you destroy the innocent along with the guilty? He protests and protests, continuing to reason and argue with God. In our Torah portion this week, we read about protest, the silent and strong protest of Shifra and Puah, the midwives who act against Pharaoh's decree to kill every newborn Jewish baby. They're the ones, as you may remember, who helped with the birth of Moses, allowing Moses to live so that his mother could then place him in a basket, setting him off on a journey that would ultimately change the world. That's protest. And we need protest, our tradition tells us. As Reverend William Sloan Coffin, a great peace activist and religious thinker, once said, when you see caring people, or when you see uncaring people in high places, everybody should be mad as hell, he said. But what we saw in Washington on Wednesday was not what Coffin referred to as mad as hell. Instead, it was rage, which we also, interestingly enough, see in the Torah. In fact, rage too is in our Torah portion this week. When Moses sees an injustice, an Egyptian hitting a Hebrew slave, and goes into a rage, and Moses actually kills the Egyptian. But the Torah tells us that Moses was wrong. Even though Moses is identifying with a beaten man and a Hebrew, it's wrong to use violence. And Moses knew it was wrong. So wrong that he quickly fled the scene. And I don't think Moses fully understood the repercussions of his rage until finally he stood at the burning bush later in this week's portion, when he finally was able to calm himself down and was able to stand at the bush long enough to see God's presence and feel it. And in that moment of calm and connection, learn that yes, you need enough anger to have the courage to ultimately go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go, and advocate for your people. But you can't go into a rage. That is not strength, because rage is when anger controls you. And that's why our leaders have to be so careful, because there's this very small space between protest, what we need, and rage. And it only takes a small match to begin a raging inferno. And Wednesday, we saw that rage enter the halls of the Capitol, where words of debate and protest were replaced by gunshots and violence. And I'm concerned on this evening that the president's decision to not attend the upcoming inauguration is another example of rage, not democratic protest. And sadly, I believe it's reason for impeachment. For you see, we read about the dangers of rage once again in our Torah, this time in Numbers chapter 20, when the people are hungry and thirsty from walking through the desert. And so God asks Moses, take the rod and assemble the people. Those are the exact lines from the Torah. Take the rod and assemble the people and order the rock to yield its water. And what does Moses do? Well, he doesn't order the rock. Instead, he takes the rod and he hits it. He hits the rock, not once, but twice, out of anger. And so what does God do? It's absolutely extraordinary. God says to Moses, and I quote, "You're not going to go into the lands because of hitting the rock." And now I end quote, but because hitting the rock is not leadership. That's rage. It's actually an amazing story, these verses, for Moses is mentioned in the Torah 772 times. Moses is the greatest leader our people has ever known. Moses is the one who speaks to God face to face. And yet God says, you're not going into the lands. You're not going into the lands because you can't be the leader. The people will go with someone else. They'll go to the lands. But there is no place for rage in a leader. And so, yes, America demands protest and debate. After all, that is what the halls of Congress are for. But our leaders need to know that there's a short gap, a small space between protest and rage, and they need to be responsible for incitement. And right now, what they need to do is have our nation slow down and stop and see the burning bush, see the holiness in one another, and rather than lash out in anger, ask the question, what is causing this anger in America, and how do we bring healing? How can we as a democracy make sure every individual's life is better, Republican and Democrat and independent? How can we as a democracy care for each other? For that's our shared mission. That's what we learn from our tradition, that we need to protest and debate to aid in our discernment, to make us better as a nation. But anger unchecked only causes damage to everyone. Or as we read in the book of Psalms, our literature, chapter 37, verse 8, stop being angry, turn from your rage, do not lose your temper. It only leads to harm. Our leaders need to stop this harm. The anger has gone too far. Let us hold them responsible. Let us step back and listen. And let us pray for one another. And let us share in the common good. And so before we conclude, rather than conclude with a prayer, I'd like us all to write one. I'd like us to open up the chat box and begin to write a prayer for America. But I ask one important thing, that it not be partisan, that it not be divisive. Let us pray for the whole of America. And so we're going to open the chat box. Please type in your prayer. We're not going to recite them together, but we're going to read each line as though it's another verse in our Torah. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed God's grace on thee, and crown thy good with peoplehood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law.
Thank you for your beautiful words, everyone. Together, let us say a collective
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
So let us return in our service to the Mourner's Kaddish. And so if you are here this evening in observance of a yahrzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, or are in a period of mourning, I invite you to place the names of the loved ones you're remembering in the chat box. And after you do so, I invite you, if you're able, to please rise. And this week, we also recall those who are members of our community who recently passed. Judith Berg, Scott Bortman, Elaine Cadets, Paul McIntosh, Michael Sandler, Dorothy Schwartz, Irene Sillin, Herb Turney, Ezra Vogel, and Sarah Weiner. And this week, we are also been asked to recite the names of Meyer Cheskis, the father of Selma Liebnick, Jean Goldstein, the grandmother of Rabbi Joel Sissenwein, Harold Ifshin, father of Vicky Zell, and Irene Lappin, the grandmother of Pam Foreman.
Those names we also add Maxwell Morton and Barry Gold.
And so if you're able, I invite you to please rise as we recite these sacred words together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Announcements. We have a lot of adult learning taking place this coming week. Speakers from Israel, from all over. We invite you to join us next Friday evening, Cantor Zell.
We have a very special event, a way for our community to honor and celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy. We are bringing, thanks to the partnership from our Racial Justice Initiative, we are bringing the Afro-Semitic experience back to Temple Beth Elohim for a conversation and concert taking place at 7:30 p.m. after services. So we hope you'll join us at 6. We hope you'll then depart for a quick bite and come back at 7:30 to learn about the impact that this band has on our world.
Fantastic. Let us make Kiddush. And so if you have a cup of wine or juice close by, and if you hold it up, you may appear on the screen. And let's begin. Cantor Zell, will you lead us?
With pleasure. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho ve'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. Raise them up high. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. L'chaim.
L'chaim. And the Havzi family.
We're going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. There we go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Amen. Take a bite, complete the mitzvah, and then we are going to open up the microphones and wish everyone Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
I was trying to find one of my favorites. Oh, we were there. We were there for a minute. There.
Shabbat shalom, Roberta.
Hi, Julie.
Baby.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Leave right here.
Shabbat shalom, Mary.
Hit this. Leave.
Shabbat shalom.
Rabbi Sal.
And then there's another thing.
Shabbat shalom.
I'm gonna get up and this one back.
Julie.
Yeah. This one, yeah.
Shabbat Shalom, Nabisky.
Again.